Good afternoon, JP. Thank you for allowing me to interview you today. In the interest of decorum, I'd like to introduce JP properly, but I guess I should introduce myself first. I am a critical care physician and anesthesiologist who has practiced in Victoria for the past 22 years. I am also a chartered investment manager. Along with two other partners, I founded 3P Financial, a firm that helps physicians and other professionals onboard to their own pensions. We also founded the Austere Fund, a value-focused investment fund designed to create long-term capital appreciation and retirement accounts for people just like yourselves. Mr. Laporte is a highly experienced Diamond Jubilee award-winning pension lawyer. He is considered a true expert in this field, and I can attest that the depth and breadth of his knowledge in this subject matter is formidable. He founded INTEGRIS Pension Management in 2004 with the goal of helping small business owners accumulate enough savings to retire comfortably despite facing more and more honest taxes in our futures. I'd like to structure this interview by asking JP a series of admittedly tough questions about who these pensions apply to and what sort of advantages and downside they may offer.
Well, first of all, depends what you mean by high earners. You probably know that in Canada, you can only get tax assistance on what's called the maximum pensionable salary. And this year, it's about $163,000. So if you think that a doctor making $163,000 is a highly paid doctor, then that's debatable. So the answer is this: most physicians that we know of make in excess of that maximum pensionable salary. Very few will make much lower salary levels from their medical corporations than that. So really, virtually all doctors in Canada are candidates for a personal pension plan.
Are there any that aren't a great fit, though?
Well, if you're a physician that spends every penny you make, and some, because of your lifestyle, and you're unable to save for retirement, then yeah, you're not a good candidate for PPP, because there is nothing to save. Every penny you earn is spent. But aside from this extreme case, most people would qualify. Of course, if you're over the age of 71, the law doesn't allow you to set up a PPP. So that excludes those older physicians. But again, that's typically not what we see in the field. Usually most physicians that we deal with are well below the age 71 cutoff.
Some of my colleagues, their accountants have encouraged them to pay themselves only with dividends and not obtain T4 income, say over the past 10 to 20 years. And so many of them are concerned because they have no opportunity to buy back the years of service to their corporation, that this still may not be a very attractive idea.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're probably saying, is it worth signing up for a pension plan if you've taken dividends up till this point in time? And the answer is, well, it depends. If you are in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and I would even venture up to about 60, it still makes sense, because you still have a runway from, let's say, age 60. Let's use an extreme example. From age 60 to age 71, you'll be able to, even though you can't buy back past service, you can do significantly higher annual current service contributions, which are well above the maximum allowed under an RRSP. So that's number one. Number two, if you have RRSPs, and I understand that if you've only paid yourself dividends, you may not have much by way of RRSPs, but let's say you do have some RRSPs. If you roll them into the PPP's additional voluntary contribution account on a tax-free basis, the medical professional corporation can write off the investment management fees related to those assets, in addition to all the other assets of the plan. So this is a new layer of tax deductions, which you can start enjoying from, let's say, age 60 until you wind up the plan, which could be well beyond age 71. You also have the ability to do a buyback of it's not a buyback of passive, it's a RRSP catch-up contribution. So there's a one-time initial RRSP contribution that can be made in addition to the higher annual contribution under current service that will give you some extra tax deductions, some extra tax write-offs. And of course, that money will now grow tax sheltered for any number of years until you start decumulation, which for an RSP starts at 71. And there are other tax deductions which would still apply. One is what we call the special payment. So that's the ability to top up the pension plan if the internal rate of return is below 7.5%. So that would apply, and we can do this every year. We can file an annual valuation that shows that the assets have only grown by whatever, 4%, 3%, whatever you've invested in, which then would create underfunding. And that would give the MPC more corporate tax deductions every year that we file a valuation. And then there's a terminal funding tax deduction, which can also be triggered if, let's say, this physician is 60 and decides to turn on the pension at age 64, just to pick an arbitrary age. There would be an additional corporate tax deduction that's attributable to the pension through what we call terminal funding rules. So I'll stop here because I could go on, but there are a whole bunch of other tax deductions which still accrue to the doctor via the pension plan, even though we weren't able to recognize past service. And often people don't know about these, so they base their analysis strictly on whether past service deductions are available. And I think that's a very dangerous approach.
You've answered a bunch of my questions ahead of time. That's good. I just as a little anecdote, we've put about 40 or 50 physicians through our spreadsheet models, and we have not yet to find a physician that would not be better off in the pension plan. But that shouldn't be a surprise to you. So my second question, you've answered most of it already, but what is the chance the government will take these tax benefits away?
Well, everything's possible. However, there are a number of factors which allow me to sleep at night. The first one is that pension legislation, remember the PPP is anchored in the Income Tax Act, in the pension rules, and those rules trace their origin all the way back to 1917, when the very first Income Tax Act was adopted by the Canadian government to help finance the First World War. So these rules are not sort of flash in the pan, recent thing. This is all the way back to the inception. And so one thing is it's a stable regulatory regime that's been around for a long time. Number two, other Canadians, which are very influential, like government employees, like teachers, like unionized workers, all use the same rules to enjoy pensions. So if the government decide to say, you know what, we don't like PPPs, we're going to amend the Income Tax Act and remove the rules relating to pensions, that would be a lot of constituencies not too happy. So that may be a politically kind of a third rail. Now, let's assume that they say, well, be crafty about it. We will keep pensions for ourselves, for the public sector. All the nurses and all the public sector employees will keep these gold-plated pension plans for ourselves because we love them. But the people in the private sector, like the doctors and the pharmacists and the dentists, who are not technically part of the public service, will change the rules so it's no longer permissible to have a pension plan. I think that would be politically dangerous as well, because that's still a lot of people that would say, why are we treated on an unequal footing with people that are working in the public sector? Sorry. So while that's not a perfect answer, I think there's some political costs to doing that. Now, even from a pure tax policy point of view, remember, when a doctor is benefiting from a PPP pension, that creates an offset against public pensions, like the old age security pension and the guaranteed income supplement. So in a way, the Canadian government is saving billions of dollars in these public pensions because they're able to use the PPP revenue streams to create offsets. So they're actually saving money by having shifted the burden of retirement onto the shoulders of the private taxpayer. So it would be shooting themselves in the foot if they said, well, you can't have these pensions anymore, because then people would say, okay, well, I guess I'm going to apply for OAS because I don't have any offsets anymore, or as many offsets. So there's a bunch of technical and legal and political reasons why while it's possible, theoretically anything's possible, in my mind, it's unlikely that they would get rid of these rules. Now, typically the way that tax changes occur is they grandfather solutions or tax structures that were up to that point permitted by the Income Tax Act. So all the people who signed up for a PPP, normally we'd expect them to be grandfathered and allowed to continue on, even though no new doctors would not be able to sign up if they changed the law and eliminated that kind of structure.
Pretty convincing. Thank you. When I first, I was the first pension subscriber in 3P. And when I first went to my accountant and described the whole setup and the idea of a personal pension, he didn't really like the idea much, and told me that he thought it was going to be inflexible compared to the traditional method of using my professional corporation and RRSP savings strategy. I have subsequently changed my account, but do you have any comments about that sort of feedback?
Well, yeah. So first of all, unfortunately, and I don't like to throw accountants under the bus, but unfortunately, the level of technical expertise in Canada when it comes to pensions in the small private sector is dismal. It's scary. There isn't a true understanding of the rules and how they can be applied. And you experience that, and thousands of other business owners across Canada experience the same thing. And to be fair to the accounting community, they never really were exposed to it because it's just not really done. Less than 2% of the market has some sort of personal pension in Canada. 98% are still in the dark, have no clue that this is even possible. Therefore, it stands to reason that somewhere near 98% of accountants don't touch these things, don't deal with them, don't learn about them, don't process them, and therefore cannot really be useful in providing advice, except sort of, back of the envelope, which is the kind of advice you got initially. So that's a scary statement, but we're trying to remedy that. We are going to be having a national conference on pensions in November of this year, where we're going to invite thousands and thousands of accountants across the country to sign up for an educational session on pensions. And hopefully that will break the ice a little bit. We know that the Manitoba Chartered Professional Accountants Association has put on its curriculum a course that I co-wrote on personal pension plans. So little by little, we are reducing this lack of technical expertise within the accounting community. And we hope that the types of experiences you've had will become a thing of the past in the future.
Thanks. By the way, I took that course and I highly recommend it. Quite a few of my colleagues and prospective clients have asked why they can't manage their own investments. They don't really want to give up control, and they'd like to have the personal pension plan, yet manage their own investments within that shell. Why can't they?
Well, and it's not INTEGRIS that's causing that. It's just the way that the securities legislation works in Canada. Under securities laws, you need to have a registrant, someone who has a securities license in order to trade in a security. And unfortunately, when it comes to personal pension plans or even individual pension plan accounts, the financial institutions that allow these types of accounts to be open on their books to take assets in and to manage the assets, they want to have a registrant associated with the account. So unlike what they've done with RRSPs, where you can have a self-directed RRSP, that feature or that business solution hasn't been extended to PPPs yet. So to me, it's a matter of time, perhaps. But there's also a public policy reason why perhaps this is not such a bad decision or way of doing things. Remember that the pension plan assets are there to be sacred money, money that will be there in retirement, not speculative money, not risky money, but solid money that can make sure you can pay for your gas and your groceries and your electricity bill, and the necessities of life are covered by your pension plans. Whereas more discretionary spending, like maybe the next Bentley or the next trip to the Galapagos, that can be funded with other types of accounts. But the core solid money has to be prudently managed. And if you have a portfolio manager that is entrusted with growing that money with a mandate, because all PPPs come with a statement of investment policies and procedures, a roadmap as to how the money should be invested prudently, then the likelihood of saying, gee, let's buy some Bre-X because the stock is going through the roof and Nortel seems to be going up too, so I'm going to buy some Nortel stock. The likelihood of making those types of personal calls are reduced when you have a discretionary portfolio manager associated with your PPP account. So it's a double-edged sword. But I understand that the do-it-yourself doctors who really love to invest money might see this as a bit of a impediment.
Thanks. By the way, with those two examples, you're dating yourself and me, because the young doctors don't know what Bre-X or Nortel were anymore.
Oh, okay, well, maybe you give me some more recent.
Yeah, that's funny. That's 1999 era, but that's funny. It's hard to believe that was over 2 decades ago. At all that debacle. Good. Now let's assume disaster hits and you go bankrupt and 3P goes bankrupt, and what happens to their pensions then?
Nothing happens to the pension. That's the beauty of it. Why? Because first of all, INTEGRIS doesn't manage the assets. So it's not like we can lose it. And I'm going to date myself. It's not like I can do a Bernie Madoff with the PPP money because I don't manage it. It's not mine to touch. Maybe you can update us on more recent fraudsters. Number two, the monies are sitting in a trust, which is separate and distinct from any of the INTEGRIS assets. So there's no situation where a creditor of INTEGRIS would say, hey, Lauren has X dollars in his PPP. I'm going to go and seize that money. It's off limits to creditors. So that's number two. Number three, this plan is registered with CRA. So nothing prevents you from firing INTEGRIS at any point in time and saying, I like the PPP, but I don't like INTEGRIS. I want to cut them off. You can fire INTEGRIS and the plan still has an independent life outside of INTEGRIS because it's already registered with the government. So we're nuclear proof. We can go under tomorrow and the assets would continue. The tax sheltered nature of the account would continue going forward. You just have to find someone else to administer it, but there'll be no shortage of people wanting to get free business. So it really, really, there's no loss, there's no real risk in the extreme example of insolvency.
And I'd like to add that assets sit at a custodian, which is a separate institution from the investment manager, then the portfolio manager, and the administrator. So if we all went bankrupt, CI Direct, which is one of the largest banks in Canada, went bankrupt, and 3P went bankrupt, assets would still be sitting at the custodian safe.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
So it's nuclear proof.
So the stock market looks pretty frothy these days. It's been going up and up ever since March of 2020, as improbable as it is. If I have a PPP and the stock market tanks, what would I be protected?
Well, not only would you be protected, would you be celebrating? Because that's exactly what happened on March 23rd of last year, when in a single day, the TSX lost something like 35, 36%. And our customers at INTEGRIS, instead of crying because they had lost a third of their money, more than a third of their money in one day, were happy, well, not happy, but they were comforted by the fact that because this is a PPP, we can file what's called an ad hoc actual valuation to paper or to crystallize the paper loss created with the assets, because the assets tanked, but the liabilities, the promised benefits didn't change. So now we have a massive, massive deficit on the plan. And unlike an RRSP, where you're not allowed to top up the RRSP with more contributions because you've used up your limit, with the PPP, we can create brand new room through additional corporate tax deductible contributions that we call special payments. So not only can we give the Medicine Professional Corporation a massive tax write-off that others don't have access to. So that's advantage number one. But advantage number two is that those pre-tax dollars that are now being deployed inside the PPP can be used to do the classic buy low, sell high, which is exactly what happened. So those really nice Mercedes stocks, or maybe I'm dating myself, I was going to say Daimler Chrysler, but I don't think it exists anymore. Those stocks that were 36% more expensive yesterday, now you can buy them at a 36% discount. So that's pretty good. And then when you start selling out those positions to make some profits, the gain is also tax exempt because it's a pension plan. So what we've done is we've created a hedging strategy using tax assisted dollars to ride the big gyrations in the market. I mean, I don't know what else I have to do for people. I think that's pretty darn good.
It's my favorite part of my favorite feature of a PPP, honestly.
Well, what about the intergenerational wealth transfer?
Well, we're going to talk about that now.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought that was your favorite part.
So when I die, and I've seen a lot of people die lately. In fact, last 2 weeks, I filled 10 death certificates. And most of them were my age or younger. How will the PPP help my family?
Wow. So it doesn't work for everybody, but if family members of yours can be added to the payroll of your Medicine Professional Corporation, and that we're seeing that a lot, children that are part-time, minimum wage, helping out with the books, helping out with a website, helping out with whatever. So if you can legitimately put them on the payroll, you can also legitimately add them to your PPP. And what happens is, so you start your pension, you're collecting your whatever it is, $100,000, $200,000 a year pension from the PPP, and then you pass away. And let's assume, let's make it really, really drastic. You're with your spouse and you're both in the same car accident. What happens? Well, in a PPP, the millions of dollars that are sitting in the account are, instead of being subjected to a deemed disposition, which is what happens with an RRSP, instead of that, that money, that capital, is now reclassified as pension surplus. It's surplus because there's no one to pay it to. Can't pay it to your spouse, she's passed away. So now that the pension plan has discharged its obligation, meaning that it paid a pension while you were alive, and it would have paid a pension to your spouse had she been alive, the rest of the money is considered surplus. But the kids are also plan members. So what happens is the children, by operation of law, now have access to the surplus. So long as they don't pull it out, there's no tax. So this $2, $3, $4 million that you left behind for your kids could balloon to $10 million by the time the kids need to pull money out. Right? A much better situation than the RRSP, where in this situation there's a deemed disposition and half the money, perhaps more depending on the province you're in. In Ontario, it's more than half, goes to CRA, and the kids only get the crumbs. Now, Lauren, to put this in perspective, we had a gentleman, 73 years old, from Alberta, so next door to you, came to us and said, hey, I have an IPP, and I've done really well over my career, and it's got $8 million in assets in it. So good for you. So my first question was, I assume your actuary that set up this IPP for you put your kids in the plan, right? He goes, no. Isn't it an individual pension plan? Why would I put my kids in the plan? So I said, you realize that since you don't have a spouse, if you were to die tomorrow, of the 8 million, about 4 million would go CRA, and then your kids would get the other 4 million. You realize that, right? He goes, yeah. So it doesn't have to be that way. If you were to put the kids in your plan, the full 8 million would become surplus and 0 would go to CRA. So it's your choice. You know, it's a.
Sorry, and probate as well, right?
Oh yeah, you bypass probate as well.
That's
as an extra cherry on top of the cake.
great, great. So thank you for all this information. One final question. So we've talked a lot about the upside to starting up your own pension. Can you tell me about the disadvantages of a PPP compared to alternatives?
Yeah, the biggest Achilles heel of the PPP is that because it's highly regulated, highly structured, and it's really a creature of pension and tax laws, there's a lot more paperwork to sign up a PPP than, let's say, an RRSP, or just keeping the money in your corporate bank account and declaring the odd dividend when you need money. A lot more paperwork to set it up. And even once it's set up, to keep it going, there would be actual valuation reports, there's annual filings, we have to maintain some financial statements for the pension fund. All of those things is more paper. And for busy physicians who have so many things going in their lives, that could be an irritant. So that is the only downside that I can think of. If you can think of other main real material downsides, please let me know, because after 9 years, I can't think of anything else except that.
I think probably complexity. Yeah, the
paperwork, complexity, understanding it, convincing your accountant.
Yes.
All that stuff takes time, takes mental energy. And a lot of people say, you know what, my life is going by so fast. I don't want to bother learning this stuff. Well, then you can pay the $4 million to CRA when you die.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth learning about it, even if you have just a working knowledge and you don't need to know all the nitty gritty. That's why you have people like yourself working for us.
Well, that's why we're here. We're here to prepare the paperwork, to file it, to explain it, to demystify it. That's why we're getting paid. But it is something that you don't have with an RRSP or a TFSA or other simple strategies, right? You don't have this mountain of paperwork Now we're using electronic signature nowadays, so it's better than in the old days, but it's still a lot for people to digest. And I would say that's the real key downside.
I think we should probably wrap this up because it's getting a little bit long now, but and the weather's awfully nice outside. Um, Once again, thanks for your time and expertise, JP. As you know, I have a PPP myself, and I know my family sleeps a lot better at night because of it. Goodbye and enjoy the remainder of your summer.
Thank you so much.